In this video, I want to tell you why this is probably one of the most versatile cameras that you can buy for your next adventure to take shots that are just not possible with about any other camera like GoPros, any action type camera, or even the big cameras that I'm using for these type of shots. We're talking about the Insta360 X3. This is a 360-degree camera, meaning it captures the whole sphere around the camera, giving you enormous amounts of flexibility in the post-processing of said video material, making it so that you can actually look in any direction after the fact. So for example, I can look at the camera like this, and I can show you my face, or I can choose to show you what is behind the camera. For example, in this case, my two other cameras. That is something that is just not possible with a GoPro or regular type cameras. However, and for obvious reasons, everything comes with its drawbacks. This is no different. And in this video, I want to cover both of those things. I want to cover why I think you probably should get one of these cameras, but also give you a couple of the insights that I have had using this type of a 360 camera for about 2 years now. Now, starting out, I will cover a couple of the technical specifications of this camera. This camera can take up to 72 megapixel photos. It can shoot a whole sphere video in 5.7K up to 30 frames per second. And if you scale it down to 4K, it can actually go up to 60 frames per second for the whole sphere. It can also shoot in single lens mode, meaning it can look in one direction and or the other, which makes it so that it's basically baked into the video file. And all of this is captured with a dual half-inch sensor camera setup, meaning there's one lens right here and there's another one on the other side. I find the screen really helpful. The batteries are powerful enough to get you along for a decent amount of time, and the usability of the whole device is very simple. Now though, why would you want a camera like this? And it all has to do with the fact that you get everything. So you're not just taking a video like this and you're talking to the camera or you're showing something and you have to decide now what you want to have in the frame. Rather, you just film and then you have an editing step after where you have all of the flexibility to choose wherever you want to look with this camera. And that is something, as I've mentioned, that other cameras cannot give you. The drawback here is that the camera only shoots 5.7K video for the whole sphere, which means once you actually select a certain frame of that image, it is actually going to be closer to a full HD video, depending on how much you zoom into the sphere. And that could be considered a drawback. Because if you're someone that specifically knows what they're filming and where they're pointing the camera and you just want the best quality of that, then I would probably consider to going with something like a GoPro if you want an action type camera, or an action type camera from any of the other brands like also Insta360. Or if you really want to go up a notch, you can go with an APS-C sensor or full frame sensor mirrorless camera setup, which obviously would give you an even better image quality. This here is probably not going to give you that. But again, it has all of these other benefits, which I think are still absolutely worth it to bring this into your travel case. The main thing about this camera is just the freedom that you get from it. For example, when you are snowboarding and you just have the stick out like this, you can actually make it look like you are with someone else that is filming you. The stick itself kind of disappears in the editing process, so it's basically invisible. You can also use this, for example, when you're doing a motorbike ride, like we've done recently here on Bali when we were driving to Lovina. I can just hold this basically over my shoulder like this, and later in the editing, I can make it look like a drone is following me. I can also use it on hikes, for example. Again, just holding it out like this, and you have an image that basically looks like someone is following you with a camera. You have the ability to have an amazing third-person view that is very hard to capture when you're using any of these other type cameras like GoPros and so on, because with those, you really have to consider where you're pointing the camera, if you're currently pointing in the right direction, and especially if you do stuff that is, for example, behind you, there's not really a chance to see where the camera is currently pointing, if it is still you in the frame, or if you're just filming the floor. With this camera, you don't have to worry about these type of things. You can actually just do all of that after the fact, which makes it incredibly flexible and easy to use. Now, this is obviously not everything that this camera can do. As I've mentioned, there's also the abilities, for example, to use the single lens mode, meaning you can just choose one of the lenses to be active, and then you can basically use this as a GoPro style camera, like an action type camera. So you just hold it out, you already decided for yourself which angle you want, and then you just talk to this frame, and it actually has a slightly higher resolution in that case, which makes it also a bit more of a use case in that specific area. However, I personally still think that the power in this camera is the sphere capture. Another really cool thing about this camera is that there's obviously all kinds of accessories, like for example this here, which is a 3-meter long stick that you can use to, again, get even more drone-like looking shots. 3 meters is really a long way to having a camera far away from you, but still being in control and the one person kind of shooting with it. And of course, it is also waterproof to 10 meters without the case, and there's also an underwater housing for actual diving, which makes this a camera that you can, for example, take here in Lovina to dolphin watching. And we actually captured some of those shots, which I will show you here with this, which again gives you the flexibility to look at whatever is happening around you, not worrying if you're currently looking in the right direction, because dolphins might just be appearing right there. You can also use this camera for photography, which for example is really cool for these tiny world or tiny planet type shots, but also for group shots where you again just hold out the camera and then later on you can frame it so that everybody's in the frame and you don't really have to worry about the type of shot with your phone where you're like your arms in the shot and you have the wide angle, but then the body on the left is not in the frame. All of those things aren't really happening with this camera. You still have to kind of learn how to use the camera because there's also a kind of art to holding it in terms of whether you have the camera above you or if you actually want to hold it a little bit more below. Now, of course, in digital fashion and with cameras like this, nowadays there's just much more packed in this as well, like time-lapse recording, loop recording, and you can do time warping, hyperlapse stuff, and all of that. But I think that's not the point of this video. I am mostly concerned with the fact that this is a camera that gives you an incredible amount of flexibility. You can post-process it on your phone or on your computer with applications that are relatively easy to use. And you just have so much more in terms of shot variation that you can achieve with this that I think this belongs into pretty much anyone's travel backpack. And if you're looking to buy any 360 type camera, I would actually specifically look into Insta360 X3 because of the features that I mentioned in this video. And the one contender would maybe be the Insta360 1RS, 1-inch Leica model 360, something like that. However, that's about double the price, and it is a little bit harder to use, and it only comes with a marginal increase in sharpness and also light sensitivity for low light capabilities. So overall, this is just the version that I think brings the most bang for buck in this category. And so I'm currently recommending this one. And with that, I hope you're upgrading your videos, your vlogging, your travel documentation with something like a 360 capture camera that gives you all of this freedom. And I'll see you. Ciao, ciao.